Right, hello, hello. Set 8 has finally been completely revealed, which is really, really awesome. I didn't know it was coming that soon. I'm always the type of player who doesn't really know when the next set's coming out or when all the cards will be released, but we've got them all. And that means that I get to theory craft, which I'm terrible at doing, and try and deck build. For myself, I'm always one who will just carry the previous deck that I'm playing into the new format and adding in the new cards that I like to see if it works. I do admit though, as I'm going to primarily talk about Sapphire Steel as I review these cards, but of course I look at the entire set because I play a lot of Lorcana and play a lot of different decks. I think for Sapphire Steel, there's a lot of tools there now that we could build something completely different to what we've seen before with Kiwi and what we've seen with the Ramp Sapphire Steel. I think there's something there really with the Jasmine ally stuff and hero stuff. I think that's really cool. I think with that new Arthur, that is a four cost 6/6 quest for three that I'll cover in a second. I think there's something there as well where we could just go a completely different direction. I don't think we need to be as reliant on Alice plus Pluto as much anymore. But for myself personally, like I say, when I go to a new set, I just look at the cards that I think are very cool and very good and could slot into the deck I'm already playing, and then I just add them in and start testing and start playing and see how well they perform. Of course, I'm still part of different testing groups and stuff like that, and I'm sure we'll be working together to get some really good results and see what's really can be made of set 8 because set 8 seems like this really interesting one. There's loads of different like cards with different like unique color combos that we haven't really seen before, and I think they have the ability to bring them to the forefront and make them quite playable. So we might even see that the going into set 8 and then onto set 9, we might see like less traditional color combos taking the front forward, like Amber and Sapphire, taking like quite a big step forward and being one of these really, really well-known color combos, and like maybe one of the more traditional ones like Ruby Amethyst takes a back foot. But when that's all just predictions, I think it's a really interesting set. There's so much there. But I was just gonna go for each card that really takes note to me. And just like talk about why I'm interested in them. There are loads of like, there's just so many cards in this set that I think are good. And I haven't like picked all of them because there are some cards like as I scroll down, this lady card that just objectively reads as a good card. When you play this character, you may play a character with a 2 cost or less for free. Like besides, unless you play that into a 3 cost Ursula Deceiver of All that's going to double singlet the Storm Rage on, those are just objectively a good card. So I felt like I didn't want to talk too much about it. And like I'm pretty sure about 100 other people doing card reveals and set reviews are going to say the exact same things. So I just picked the ones out that I really want to talk about and had something to say on. And we'll start off with the Ludwig Von Drake. And as I mentioned, I think with this set, like we've got some stuff for your unique color combos. Like Amber Sapphire's never really been that big since set one. In set one, it had this like aggro princess queen type stuff you could do. But since then, since the game became like quite a competitive TCG, like it has never really seen that much play outside of some like very interesting like Alice plus Sven decks that I thought were quite fun, but I don't know if they were competitively viable. But this card is just reads so powerful that it could force you to try out the color combo and force someone to make something that really works. And it's when you play this character, chosen opponent reveals their hand, discards a non-character of your choice. That's just bare necessity, so you get that on two. And then you also get when this character is banished, you may put it into your Inkwell face down. So it also, in a sense, could be a ramp card, and there's also a body on board that quests for 1/1 and quest for one, sorry, is a 1/1. So it's basically the 2 cost Grammatala that when she is banished, she's put into the Inkwell, and there's also bare necessities wrapped up. So it's two cards in one. I think like, that alone just could be great. Like that's such a powerful card that it's making a lot of people want to look at the color combo and look at the options they have and what they can actually build there. And you've got still so many things to ramp into of Sapphire that are so powerful at the top end. Like you could still be doing like all of your Tamata dime stuff. You know, you've got all the Amber move. You've got two different Mufasas to use. You've got the Amber one, and you've also got the Sapphire Mufasa, both the legendaries. You've still got Surface Stitch. You've got like loads of cards that you could fit in there. It just needed like a lot of these like color combos. I feel like Blurple was the one that was always falling behind, was that a lot of these color combos they just needed to have some sort of removal or control option, something that could rival playing steel or red, because steel and red is where majority of the removal is, but a majority of like the functional cards like removal and disruption and things like that. Mainly removal, because disruptions like in green and stuff like that. But it just felt like if you didn't play steel or red, you can't really interact with the board in any way besides challenging. I'm not saying this card can interact with the board outside of challenging, but you can start doing disruption, which I'm just going to keep saying is quite good. And yeah, like the only decks that ever came out of this color combo were like aggro decks because it was just putting all the big quester cards in there and then like warding them up or whatever or restanding them was Sven. But this card like kind of brings life to it. It's like if this was just an amber card or just a sapphire card, like it would just see play all the time, I think. But because it's in this like dueling, it's going to bring eyes onto it, which is just really awesome. And another card, like I do have Sapphire Steel cards, majority of them have been picked. But there are some interesting ones as well. I wanted to just point out. I think the Colonel is pretty cool, and what I like about it is like just reads really good. While you have three or more puppy characters in play, this character gets +2 and +2 strength and +2 lore, which like of course that just reads like it's a pretty decent card, but it requires again like the Ludwig card that requires that you play Amber and Sapphire. This card then requires that you play puppies, which like again hasn't seen much play. It doesn't see much competitive play. It never really turns up at events. But when you've got a card like this, which in my opinion is quite powerful and reads quite strong, it might make you want to go look at that deck and like play a puppy deck, play an Amber Sapphire puppy deck. So I forgot as well that was the whole thing they've done with Vampire Sapphire since last set is they've made it like the puppy thing. So yeah, you could play Ludwig von Drake and then play the Colonel in a puppy deck. And like just these cards being so powerful enough makes me want to look at that color combo, and really like try and test it out and see how like viable it would be at a event. Like, could you just take it to local league and win league, and then be like, all right, that's good. Try win a store champs with it, maybe win a box with it, and then like, go, oh, there is really something to this color combo, and no one else is really playing it right now. So just having these really powerful cards makes me want to look at like Amber and Sapphire as a color combo, which is just really awesome. Like yeah, you get to use all the Perdita stuff that we've been adding in. There's like the ramp cards, like Lucky was the card reveal I had last set, which is pretty cool. You know, it gives you card draw, it gives you more puppies. So yeah, I just think that these cards make us go, oh wait, there's some really strong cards in there, but they're hidden in with an archetype that we just haven't seen that popular. So yeah, just really cool, really worth mentioning, I think. And even like Raya, so she's a 5/5, and whenever this character quests, you may pay two less to ready another chosen character. I think you could do things like ready a shark. You could do things like ready a Tamatoa. And like I feel like this, if you played against like a blue green that had a Tamatoa out and you've got this to dry or whatever, like you'd have to remove this card. And it kind of just again, it just made me feel like, oh, I'd want to pair this with a color combo with a card that I'd want to restand, so a Maui Shark or a Tamatoa, so that's Ruby and Sapphire. And yeah, it just like I think I'm not very much one for deck building. I like to find someone who's made a deck and then tweak it. That's very much what I've done every time I play TCGs. But I imagine for like people who play and just to deck build and be really creative, like this sort of card must just get your like mind thinking of so what is the thing that I'd want to do, want to ready up so it could sing or it could quest or it could challenge twice in a turn, and like how important would that be? So yeah, just like a really interesting card, and it's tucked away in green. It's a 6 cost, so it's fairly expensive. But you'd gain 2 lore, and then you can pay 2 to ready a character and make it do something again. Even like if you was keeping it in green still or something, like slamming that down later on in the game and standing up a 3 cost Ursula, to just like sing Let the Storm Rage on for like 4 times or something. Like I'm pretty sure, yeah, for the very creative deck building types, these cards must really be intriguing them. It's what I'm hoping at least with this set. We went with the wardrobe, Perceptive Friend. I have just the thing. Choose and discard an item card, draw 2 cards. I think it's not like the Hiram replacement, is it? Let's be honest. It's not doing what Hiram did, but for something like this, for like the Sapphire Steel ramp decks, we lost the Fortisphere, which was fairly rough. But for a card like the Wardrobe, I feel like it would close the gap enough of that missing card draw that you could fairly find these decks viable again. And like even whilst I've been saying I don't particularly think that Sapphire Steel ramp has been the viable option, I think Kiwi is the deck to play right now. And for me, um, I always like to say the version of Sapphire Steel that is the best is the one I will play. So yeah, of course, we played the ramp deck for so long. Then I felt Kiwi was the best choice, and then like pre-ban in set 7, I felt ramp was the best choice again, and now post-ban, I think Kiwi is the best choice. So if this card was able to push ramp into a position where it could be the best choice again, I definitely play it. And I feel like yeah, just if you were to TPO into playing this, unlikely they're going to remove it. You get two card draw. If you played a Popsicle turn one, you've cycled a bit more. It just feels like it could maybe, if you're ramping and it's not just I've only got Scrooge to play on four, and all he's really going to do is replace himself and find another item if he's lucky. This card could be draw two cards, and then it might just get removed. But it might be enough to link you into ramping into your bigger top end and like slamming down like Gastons that could replace themselves as well, getting closer to a tragic beast, playing like your removal, playing your big Tamatoas, playing your six cost Tamatoas. Like it felt like maybe this was like a missing piece into the just after you ramp on two, what do you put down on four just to keep the engine still running? And then like maybe it might be enough just to get you to a whole new world if you're playing a whole new world version. So yeah, it just felt like this wasn't amazing, but I could just imagine that if you ramped on two and played it down and you broke an item, you could keep your engine going for a bit longer. So for me, when I saw it, it just felt like, oh, this could be a little bit more life to Sapphire Steel ramp. Of course, I don't know if Sapphire Ruby would want to use this card as well. It feels like maybe they're being quite happy with their workshop builds and stuff, as boring as they are to play against, and I imagine as boring as they are to play. But yeah, it just felt like we only really were lacking like a little bit of card draw to keep the engine functional. And then a lot of people realized you could play tons of cards like Gaston that replace themselves, and on play replace like even Grandma Tala you could put in there as well. Like just to keep that ramp, and then on four you play this and you get two cards back, or you play Grandma Tala and you get a card back, and you just keep the engine going that way. You don't have I think what they wanted with the game design of Lorcana is like these Sapphire ramp decks not to have just gigantic, like insufferable hand sizes. Because ramp is supposed to be expensive in card games. It's supposed to be putting you back on things like hand size, maybe board pressure, maybe early game pressure. And with like Hiram, you pretty much never gave up anything. You always had board pressure, you always had draw pressure, and yeah, it was just insane. But with these, it feels like you could play it, so you're only really playing like three cards in hand, but you're getting a steady flow of them. You're keeping your ramp going. So yeah, it kind of just intrigued me. I don't want to talk too much about the wardrobe because I'm pretty sure it's also going to end up being a non-play card. But there were some nice little cards in this set that kind of just felt like you play them and you could interact with items and they'd get you a card or two and you could keep the engine going. And I think all of that stuff sounds a lot more enjoyable and fun to me than playing Oswald and Workshop. So yeah, that's just where I'm at. This card as well. So as Kiwi goes into set 8 and we've got all the cards and we can start testing it, I'm very much in the vein of I don't want to just basically have the same list that we've had since set 6 and set 7. I really want to try and push it and play more things. I don't think that means we just easily slot Jasmine in, but I think Jasmine's a very interesting card, and she's the one I've really wanted to test the most. We also got a one drop Jasmine that on play gives resist one, which means that you can get a shift on two, and you can get a quest on two, which means you can pick one of these ally cards out once doing that. And again, I was posting this around in Discords and stuff like that, and I just think that's pretty good. She's a 2/5, besides Brawl, and if you're on the play, they won't be able to Brawl it, so she's probably going to get two quests. She's likely going to stick, and she's going to quest, and she's going to get you some cards in hand, and she's going to be very obnoxious on the board while she does it. And I just think that's really good. I think the downside is what I've had to look at is we have to look at all the ally type cards. And one thing that Lorcana hasn't been amazing at doing, and this comes from someone who's I play a lot of One Piece, and in One Piece you do a lot of tribal based decks, and what that means is like a deck will be themed around the one thing. So in One Piece they'll have the Straw Hat crew, which are like the gang of pirates of the main characters in the thing. And in Lorcana, they've tried to do puppy decks, they've tried to do hero decks, and with this one as an ally deck. But the vast pool of the ally characters aren't amazing. And I know you'd have to play some heroes in there. Jasmine, of course, is what you have to play in there. So like 8 slots already taken by Jasmine. That's the one drop and the four drop. That's fine. That's all part of the engine and how it works. But the vast majority of allies are not amazing. You can get a Smee, you can get a Lawrence. They're great. And then past that point, we're sort of looking at a few things like it was very useful that Pluto was, and that Cogsworth is also an ally. But then you're going to have cards that you really want to find, like Alice, who's actually a hero. Because if you manage to, as I say, do this line of play on one, quest with her, get your card that you want, play an Alice on three, do the line that you want to, that would have been awesome. But because um, she's a hero or whatever, and it's these small little phrasings, and even things like, so John Silver, the three cost that will stop your opponent from challenging. He is neither a hero nor an ally, so in a sense, really shouldn't fit in the deck. But I really want him to fit in the deck, and it kind of just feels a bit clunky there. And even as well, like a card like Pete. Pete is so insanely powerful that you pretty much have to play him in every steel deck, but he's not an ally nor is he a hero, so he doesn't fit into that demographic or that subsection as well. So the synergy is getting off just because we want to play these really powerful cards. And I'm saying that Lorcana doesn't really seem to do these archetypes and these tribal decks as well as maybe they think they do. It looks like that's why I think maybe a lot of my interest is going on this puppy, these two cards that could work very well in the puppy deck, because I'd really love to see these sort of things. I think they're very good for up and coming and new TCGs. They're very good for players who are getting into TCGs as well. If I was to tell you that you are playing this deck and it's really meta and it's very viable, and the cards that you need are all like princess cards, and you just have to buy all the princess cards of these two color combos, and you're like, that's great. I can very easily understand that and do that. But because basically most successful Lorcana decks are pile decks in a sense. Like they don't have much synergy. Like Ruby Amethyst is a bunch of different cards that work well together, but they don't synergize in the way that a tribal would. So when I've seen like yeah, it just kind of makes the game a bit different. And like I say, I think tribals are just very good for the game. And if they could use the keywords in a bit more an effective way, especially as well that we've been given this hero ally stuff off over like two sets. Set 7 had a lot of Jasmine stuff and had these Aladdin stuff, but in set 8 we've got even more, and it still feels like we don't have enough. And then rotation's going to happen in set 9, and a lot of the cards like Smee are going to go, Smee and Lawrence and whatever. So yeah, it just feels all around like it's not really working out for me. But every time we get a chance to attempt one, I always take it. In set 2, I think it was like when they released like set of dwarf cards that all had synergy. I don't even remember the amber ones. They all had synergy. I was just all over that. Like I really wanted that to work. I really tried to make that work, and it ended up just being that classic Steel Song worked really well, and then like a couple of the dwarf cards worked all right. And you had that again with the Steel Dwarfs, where like um we I really wanted to try that out. They were like dwarfs, they were knights. That was really cool. And then we ended up being that like Doc was the only real playable one, and Happy was sort of playable as well. And like you sometimes use the mine that they have as the location, but then like the majority of those cards just didn't see any play. So it's yeah, it's kind of crazy like that. But with the allies type stuff, I think you still have a vast. You could pick allies from any movies, any franchise. That's kind of cool. And I think this one has a shot at being fairly viable. And I think a lot of people will be happy to know that I would cut the Robin Hood package. And in my comments, people can stop asking, what's the replacement for Robin Hood? Because I haven't got any copies of it. It will be Jasmine from now on because I think she's a pretty good card. And there were also cards as well that when me and Justin have deck built that he's always thought were quite powerful, and I just thought kind of missed the mark. And Ling is one of them. It is a three cost 3/3 that when you play it, all your heroes get +1 um +1 strength. And I think if you to play Jasmine into Ling, and make her into 3/5, you're fairly setting up a strong board to win like most low and mid range matchups, and even win the early game versus like RP or Ruby Sapphire. So yeah, just overall, I think Jasmine's basically is the card I'm trying to build around the most. I do have a list to show at the end, and Jasmine's sort of being the centerpiece for that. But to stop waffling on about Jasmine because I've been talking for a while. Here's another card is Bernard over Prepared. When you play this character, if you're an ally in play, you may draw a card. I think for a lot of people complain about the draw power of Kiwi. So when I saw Bernard, I was slightly intrigued. He kind of also fits into the ally type theme. And I think what I always wanted was just some cards that you played and they just replace themselves. And Bernard sort of does fit that quite well. I wouldn't suggest that he's always played on turn 2. Turn 4, maybe you play a Smee and a Bernard and you take your card draw. And you just keep the engine going in that way because you're just going to always be replacing himself. He's going to be on the board. Like he's not threatening, he's not huge, he doesn't need to be instantly answered. But he's going to be on the board, he's going to be able to trade, he's going to be able to do things. And I think maybe, again, you could use a card like Ling who buffs all heroes to have 1 extra strength, so he'd become a 3/2 on board. I think just all round, yeah, he's fairly interesting. He's like, for how simple the card is and how simple it reads, I'm quite interested in playing it. So yeah, I think that's another one that I'm going to be hopefully getting a playset of to try out. Maybe you could even play him on 2, and like if you played Happy or another ally on turn 1, he can just keep the draw engine going. It's sadly, I don't know why they made him uninkable. Maybe he is, maybe because yeah, he is pretty easy conditional draw that making him inkable would have just made him too situational and too good, so they made him uninkable. But yeah, just a card that replaces himself, keeps the engine going, draw to your better cards that you actually want to be seeing. Um, All around, I don't see why it's not worth trying out. Arthur as well is the card that I, when the card was released or made public, I was out playing at my locals and I came back and I had like 20 missed messages from people talking about this card and asking, is it good for Kiwi? I think the verdict is completely still out on that. That was still only like 3 days ago. So I still don't know if this card's going to be good or not. It's very interesting. I think skipping your draw phase, my first thought on this was with the way that Kiwi worked is you didn't really draw many cards. Anyway, your only real draw engine is from that turn when you draw at the start of the turn. So taking that away from you, you have to have a really big reason to do that. So I think maybe playing this on turn 4 is not great. Maybe if you could get to 6 ink and play it at the dock, that would be pretty cool. Or maybe you could see yourself, it could be not bad on 10-4 if you could see yourself doing a line where you play it and then you play like Chi and Po or you play Cogsworth and you want Alice on turn 1 to give it ward. And at this point, if it quests twice, it's done over a quarter of the lore that you need. If it's against a non-red deck that can't just B prep you and then lock you out with no cards in hand, you could get so far ahead and just race them so far that there's no real way for them to answer it. If you were to play this next to a Cogsworth and keep questing, like it'd only really be Amethyst Steel that could answer it efficiently. Like all the Steel decks could beat it. Couldn't really beat it because it would have so much resistance to their challenging and their Steel removal. But you're always going to have cards like we don't talk about Bruno, World's Greatest Criminal Mind. So it's just I think it really in theory it sounds great. You slam it down, it just starts questing. You're not really caring about the card draw because Kiwi never does. But I think it just needs to be run through the field for a bit. There's so many variables. It's so interesting to see how the rest of the meta shapes up. Like if Chernodog got really popular, I think this is kind of cool because we're just going to slam it down and either outrace them, they can't Rapunzel cheese us, we can control the board of it. So yeah, it might even just end up being a 2 count or something like that in a deck. But yeah, it's one that I want to put the hours in and I want to test it. I want to see how the other lists are um, shaping up before I say any sort of verdict on this card is cracked or not. I'd love to have when I got back and read all them 20 messages saying, is this card good in Kiwi or we should play this? I'd love to say, oh, it's cracked. The deck is going to be so powerful next set. But again, putting a card in that skips your main draw phase is quite a big thing to do, quite a big commitment. So I generally have no opinion on if this card is very good or very bad. I think as well when you play it, because you're losing the draw phase, you have to put in cards that also draw your cards. Hence why I was kind of happy on cards like Bernard, who just, replace themselves, gets you 1 card deeper, and that's kind of cool. So yeah, it could even form its own mid-range version of the deck where you're getting draw power from other avenues and you were using cards like the wardrobe that I mentioned and you were keeping the draw power alive then, so missing that draw per turn isn't the worst thing in the world. But yeah, I just this is the card that's next to Jasmine, I reckon probably the card I'm most interested in. Just seeing how good it is. It might again just be like you play it at a low count, and at the later turns of the game, you just slam one down and say, "Can you answer that?" Otherwise, I'm going to quest for crazy amounts of lore. But yeah, again, another interesting card, and we'll do. I think I've got 3 more, and then I've got my own list to talk about. So this will be a long video. Namari, Namaru. I don't know, however you pronounce that. I don't even know what film that's from. I'm really sorry. It's not one of the classic Disney ones. But yeah, there's a card exactly like this in One Piece, which is it gets +1 strength for every card in your discard, which is just really cool. Which I've been nicknaming the card after that One Piece card. But I think they very much made it clear when they did the ban on the Fortisphere that Steel's draw power is about drawing and discarding. So if you were to have a deck that was entirely based around filter type looter cards, so you had the Mulan 1 cost, you had the Simba 1 cost, and you were just drawing cards through that and discarding and like filtering your hand rather than drawing the cards that um, rather than drawing the cards and having a big hand size, you're filtering through the ones you don't want. How powerful that really is, and being able to do that as often as you like, how impressive that is. As long as you never go down to 0 hand size, you can draw a card, discard the one you don't want, and then play that next one that you want or whatever. It's kind of it's fairly interesting, and I think the strength part is not that amazing. The extra thing called the other ability called extra focus. This character has +1 strength for each card in your discard. I think that's kind of cool. I think there'll be moments where you use it to take out a location, like it could maybe one shot a Mukduk mana. When you turn it sideways, it's like anything that touches it is going to get removed. I think all those things are really, really interesting. But I think the when you play this character in the end at the start of your turn, and at the start of your turn, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. And at the start of your turn, oh wow, I thought it was when you quest. That's really awesome. So being able to just filter and be like, hey, I've got this card in my hand, and it's like fire the cannons. I don't really want it for this matchup. Play Nararu, draw like Mukduk mana that you actually want. Or at the start of your turn, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. Even then, not doing the quest and just like having her on board for that, and filtering to find the exact card that you want, like how useful that is really going to be. It could be amazing. It could be a lot if we're approaching Steel in the direction that the game designed it with this draw discard thing. If you look at it, all their cards are like that, like Doc, A Whole New World. They are all based on drawing a card and discarding a card. If that ends up being very powerful, this card could be just a centerpiece and just a 4x in every Sapphire Steel deck. But yeah, this is another one. I think they just all need thorough testing. Like I'm talking about these quite early on. Desperate Plan. I feel like than this one. The only thing that holds it back is the uninkability. But besides that, I could probably objectively say it's just a good card. And if we're looking at cards like Arthur, Desperate Plan is a card that could bring that to life. If you play Arthur on your turn 4, and the only card left in your hand is Desperate Plan, you could play Desperate Plan down, and then you get up to 3 cards, and then you have like enough resources. And one more point on Arthur. If you're playing multiple Arthurs, after you've played one, you're kind of free to just put as many Arthurs on the board as you want because you can't double skip your draw phase. You can only skip it once. Um, but yeah, just like a lot of especially Sapphire Steel Kiwi, and even the Sapphire Steel Ramp versions that I've seen, they're just hoping to get this little bit of card draw to keep them going and having the ability to draw 3 cards when you have no cards in hand. So dumping the hand and then drawing 3 cards is great. We've also been doing that game plan for so long with Doc that a lot of decks are designed around that. And if you're using cards like Namari, and you're using like Mulan and Simba, you could get uninkables that you couldn't dump in your hand out of your hand, and then you could play a Desperate Plan. Otherwise, Desperate Plan's also thing is that you could just discard the ones that you don't want. So if your hand is full of uninkables like Fire the Cannons or like Along Came Zeus or Grab Your Swords or whatever it is, you can just discard them and say, right, I really don't need them for this matchup. They're kind of useless, and then draw up to the amount. So I think this is one that, yeah, it's like gonna need a playset, gonna have to test it out. It could even end up being better than Doc to the point where we just don't play Doc and we just lean on Desperate Plan. Or we could now say that we're at a point where we have two very good draw engines. We have Desperate Plan and we have Doc. So yeah, just really cool. It's also an action, which I know a lot of people would love to sing this, but playing against some decks that can just snatch it from your hand, like that's also very good for us. So yeah, just probably really high up there on my list. Not probably, it is really high up there on my list of cards for this set. Vinny is probably the last one that I think I added, then like deleted like 10 times from this list, because it's not amazing, and we're doing so many impactful things on turn 3 now that we probably don't want to play it and develop something that will never get to quest and probably just get strength anyway. It's not great, but during an opponent's turn, when one of your characters banished game 1 lore, so you just put it down and then you keep doing your thing that you do with Kiwi, having them trade and take out stuff, and then you can be like, yeah, and I'm going to gain lore every time you do that, and then at some point you cash in and quest for 1. It's not amazing, but it kind of intrigued me. I think if it was inkable, maybe I'd play it a bit more, but the more I've actually looking at it, I think there was many reasons why I didn't put this on the list, and now I have, and I'm kind of regretted putting it on the list. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to test out Vinny. He's a rare as well, which is mad for that ability, which is just mad. Yeah, I don't really have much more to talk about Vinny. And this is sort of what I'd approach set 8 Kiwi with, which is, yeah, again, the deck I'd probably want to go into the set with. I think there's a very good chance we're going to see an entirely new mid-range, or like ramp is going to come back and maybe it won't use dime, maybe it'll use mana, or maybe it will use dime and it won't use mana. I think all those like possibilities are there. We just got like such a bunch of fun cards in the not just in the dual links, like in steel, and those cards would only sort of really be alive in sapphire steel. They wouldn't work in the other color combos. So I think there's a good chance that's going to happen. But for me personally, I'm not the most creative player. I tend to just carry over from the last set what I want into the new set. And yeah, I think Robin Hood is great. He's always just been great, but of course, if we had something better, we probably would use it. And I think the Jasmine shift line is pretty interesting, and I really want to try it out. And it might not feel amazing as she's a one quester. If she was a two quester, I think there'd be no debate. She's awesome, but she's only a one quester. But giving you just constant resources and constant ways to flood the board, and just like having like more draw every turn, getting more cards, that's great. Um, it does force us to play more allies, but to be honest with you, Smee and Lawrence aren't the worst allies. Pluto and Cogsworth kind of fit in there. Chi and Poe, but yeah, I'll admit, like Lawrence, I've took out of like most of my Kiwi lists and I put it back in here purely because of Jasmine's ally synergy. Again with Happy as well, like it's not that I want to find a Happy off Jasmine, but I also don't want to find nothing. And majority of the time, I'm pretty sure I'm going to find something off Jasmine and ink what I find, and that will also preserve my hand size and keep the cards that I actually want to play because I'm going to mulligan for the cards that I want to play and keep them alive in hand. And in there, yeah, again, like Bernard is just one I want to try out. I think it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure Bernard, because he's uninkable, if he's going to end up being so clunky that I just like hate drawing the card, I'll just remove him straight away. And then a couple desperate plans in there, giving us six draw options with Doc. And it might be even better for my own personal testing to cut the docks and play four desperate plans or four desperate hands and two docks, and we'll see about that as well. And there's just the Arthur in there as well. Keeping it at a three count because I just want to see how useful it is. If I had it at a two count, it might end up just being inked and never seen like through testing, and I'm just not going to get any good data on it. But keeping it at a three counts sort of feels a fairly appropriate amount. But yeah, just going into the set, this is probably what I'm going to be trying out. Of course, also listening to Justin and like what everyone else says about Sapphire Steel, but it seems we're in a really bright spot. There's loads there for us to test out, loads there to try. They do really want us to try the um, ally hero combo stuff, so it's very much worth the testing. Like if they put all the effort in the cards as well. But on top of that, like Desperate Plan, Arthur have no hero ally synergy, and they are also just very powerful cards that I think are worth trying out. So yeah, there's just loads of talk about the new set 8 cards.